Okay, let's unpack this scenario. Imagine you're trying to pull data from a really critical system.
Yeah.
Maybe it's, I don't know, a very specific internal tool, or perhaps an API that was like custom built just for your company.
Right.
And you're using a standard ELT platform, something great like Airbyte, which, usually has connectors for almost everything.
And so many connectors.
But for this particular source, nothing. Zip. You just hit a wall.
It's such a common crossroads, isn't it? Especially now, data is absolutely vital.
Totally.
And platforms like Airbyte, they generally make moving it pretty straightforward. But yeah, when that one essential source just isn't on their list,
Yeah.
you're suddenly faced with this, well, it's a strategic decision, isn't it? Do you just wait and hope they add support?
Or find some other tool, maybe.
Exactly. Find a different way entirely. Or do you sort of roll up your sleeves and think, okay, can we build this connection ourselves?
Yes, and that's the key point. It stops being purely technical right there. It becomes a real business strategy question. And if you do lean towards that build-it-yourself route, especially within a platform like Airbyte, you're probably going to bump into their connector development kit, the CDK.
Right, the CDK. And it's useful to think of it less as just like a bunch of tools and more as a framework.
It's a framework.
Yeah, it's designed specifically to help you build those custom data source integrations, but critically, so they can live comfortably inside the Airbyte ecosystem.
Ah,
Its real power, I think, is that it handles the universal, sometimes really frustrating parts of building connectors.
like what?
Well, things like managing state mentor. You know, how the sync remembers where it stopped last time.
Oh, yeah, that's crucial.
Totally. And getting your code packaged up correctly, like in Docker containers so it runs reliably, and then hooking it all into Airbyte's own scheduling and monitoring systems.
Okay, so it basically takes care of all that standard plumbing, the operational headaches,
Pretty much.
which frees up your engineers to concentrate purely on the unique bit. How do we actually talk to our specific, maybe slightly weird data source?
Precisely. That's the core idea. Build exactly what you need, tailor it perfectly, but still leverage all the robust operational machinery that Airbyte provides.
Like the scheduling, monitoring.
Exactly. Standardized output formats.
Yeah.
On the surface, it really does sound like the best of both worlds.
It really does. Build custom, run standard. Seems perfect.
Right.
But what's the catch? I feel like there's a significant but coming.
Oh, there absolutely is a significant but. And honestly, this is often where teams can get into trouble.
Okay.
So while the CDK abstracts away a lot of that boilerplate code, building a connector still requires some serious technical chops.
Meaning?
Meaning you need engineers who are really comfortable with Python, who properly understand APIs, different protocols, authentication methods,
Sure.
and who know their way around Docker.
Yeah.
That's table stakes. But honestly, the bigger but is the maintenance.
Maintenance. Why is that the showstopper?
Because those source systems you're connecting to, they will change. It's practically guaranteed. APIs get updated, maybe they change authentication, schemas get tweaked, sometimes with very little warning.
Ouch.
And if your custom connector isn't actively maintained, like actively updated to reflect those source side changes, it will break, period.
And probably at the worst time.
Always. And then you're scrambling.
Yeah.
Building it is one challenge, sure. But committing to maintain that connector potentially forever against an evolving external system, that's the real ongoing commitment.
Yeah.
We've definitely seen teams underestimate that part.
Spending weeks fixing something that broke instead of doing new work.
Exactly. Opportunity cost.
Wow. Okay. So let's bring this back to you, the listener. You're standing at the crossroads we talked about. When does building with the Airbyte CDK actually make sense as a strategic move?
Well, based on what we're seeing in the analysis, it really seems to boil down to a specific set of conditions meeting up.
Okay. Like what?
First, that data source you need has to be absolutely critical for your business. Like, you can't function properly without it.
Non-negotiable.
Right. Second, there genuinely has to be no other viable pre-built option out there that actually works for you. You've looked, and it just doesn't exist or doesn't cut it.
Uh-huh.
And this is the big one. Your team needs to be fully ready. And that means not just having the technical skills to build it initially,
Right. The Python, the APIs.
but also being organizationally prepared and truly committed to the long-term ongoing burden of maintaining that connector indefinitely as that source system keeps changing underneath it.
So if any of those pieces aren't there, like the data's important, but maybe not that critical, or maybe there is a slightly clunky workaround.
Yeah, or maybe you just don't have the dedicated engineering team with the bandwidth for potentially years of upkeep.
Then maybe the CDK path is actually more trouble than it's worth.
It certainly could be. If
Yes.
any part of that puzzle, critical data, no alternative, and long-term maintenance commitment is missing, then other options start looking a lot more attractive.
Like waiting for official support.
Waiting, yeah. Or maybe finding a specialized vendor to build and maintain it for you,
Right.
or even just using a completely different integration tool or approach that does support your source. It might just be the smarter strategic decision.
You know, this whole conversation really drives home that building a custom connector, it's not just, hey, engineers, go build this thing.
Not at all.
It's a major strategic choice. You're weighing those initial development costs against potentially perpetual maintenance costs. You have to understand the tech complexity, for sure, but maybe even more importantly, you have to take a really honest look at your team's long-term capacity and, frankly, their willingness to commit to this thing.
It's fascinating, isn't it, how quickly what seems like a straightforward technical integration problem pivots.
Pivots how?
It becomes this fundamental question about your team's priorities, about resource allocation, about how strategically dependent you want to be on maintaining connections to external systems. It basically asks, is this data source so important that we're willing to treat connecting to it like a product we own and maintain?
That's a really powerful way to frame it. Is it a product you own? Wow.
Yeah.
Well, if you, the listener, want to dig deeper into this whole build versus buy decision, specifically for data connectors, really get into the weeds on cost, complexity, talent strategy,
All that good stuff.
then definitely check out the full analysis over on the Curate Partners blog. That's where we drew a lot of this from. And it offers much more detail to help you make that call for your own situation.
It's worth a read if you're facing this kind of decision.
Absolutely. Thanks for tuning into this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.